Hello, and welcome to this session of the 2021 Texoma Nats Regional Conference. I'm Tony Boutté, Professor of Music at Sam Houston State University, and it gives me great pleasure to speak with you today about a project that is very near and dear to my heart. 24, a new opera from old sources. So you may all recognize this cover. It's from the 1948 edition of the G. Schirmer 24 Italian Songs and Arias. So what 24 the opera is a new two-act work featuring all of the 24 Italian songs and arias for 6 characters, offering flexible casting, featuring an original scenario with English dialogue and new orchestrations. It's a project that I've had in mind for over 5 years, but only recently have I had the time and support to develop it. Before I dive in, let's take a look at the volume of songs and arias that acts as a basis for this new work. For almost 75 years, the yellow G. Schirmer edition of 24 Italian Songs and Arias of the 17th and 18th centuries has been one of the first scores that beginning singers encounter. These 24 songs represent the fundamental beauty and diversity of the Baroque and early bel canto periods, and they are regularly used by vocal pedagogues to teach the basics of vocal technique and musicianship. But over time, many of them have become overexposed, and their potential as works of high art and expression has become undervalued. First, I want to speak a little bit about Alessandro Paresotti. Originally a composer, Paresotti is better known today as the original editor of a song collection titled Ariae Antiche, published in the late 1800s. It contains 99 songs in 3 volumes and was marketed as a collection of etudes for the study of singing. The collection was widely popular and is still being used today. Despite the time frame mentioned in the title of 24 Italian Songs and Arias, the work spans some 300 years, beginning with Giulio Caccini's Amarilli all the way through Paresotti's own Se tu m'ami, an original composition of his that he successfully passed off as one by Giovanni Battista Pergolesi until it was much later proven otherwise. Still, Paresotti did such a convincing job at imitating Pergolesi's style that no one questioned the work's authenticity, and the song fit right into the style and character of the other works until savvy musicologists work to reveal the impostor. From their publication by Ricordi in the late 1880s, the 99 songs of Ariae Antiche were regularly used in voice studios in Europe and eventually in America, with several other publishers following suit to try and cash in on their popularity. But it was not until 1948 that G. Schirmer trimmed the initial 99 songs down to 24, releasing the iconic version we know today. And since then, it would set the standard for beginner Italian vocal repertoire. Let's talk about significance. Historically, the 24 songs in the G. Schirmer volume are kind of like a tour of musical composition in Italy during the period of 1600 to 1800. We will not do a deep dive into every piece, but suffice it to say that they come from many different vocal genres, including opera, cantata, standalone concert works, and even some solfege exercises with words added. And because the accompaniments were all created during the late Romantic period, they can also teach us quite a bit about that style as well. Pedagogically, I think we can all agree that if a student can master the challenges of every song in this collection, they would be ready to tackle a wide range of vocal music, including the most difficult Italian repertoire by Handel, Rossini, and Mozart. And the musical challenges and styles represented are also wide ranging and would help to prepare any student for more complex and demanding repertoire. So, what is the current state of opinion on these 24 songs and arias? The reputation of these songs suffers due to several factors. First, many of the pieces are overused to the point where students and teachers, to be honest, dread singing or hearing them. They also have a lack of respect as legitimate works of art due to the fact that most singers and teachers view them solely as study pieces. In addition, these works are often sung only by the least experienced singers, many of whom are not artistically experienced. So the performances often show a limited artistic level and do not do the songs justice, in my opinion. It's curious that Nats doesn't recognize any of these 24 pieces as legitimate arias, even though a good number of them are excerpted from full-length operas. Now, my next comment might be a bit controversial, but I think it's high time that we acknowledge many of the pieces in this volume as legitimate opera arias. I understand the impetus behind labeling them songs for purposes of choosing competition repertoire, but it does a bit of a disservice to the works that are every bit an aria as many that did not make it into this training volume. I joked recently with a colleague of mine saying that the sole reason I had for doing this project was to get all 24 songs and arias in this new work moved to the aria category for Nats competitions. Fingers crossed. So after mulling these things over for several years, yes, actually several years, I came to some conclusions on how to address this dilemma. I believed that a new work containing all 24 songs and arias seemed the obvious choice, and I wondered if anyone else had already thought of this. It turns out that there are other projects that look to recontextualize and or reinterpret these 24 songs, but not in the way that I was conceiving. My idea was to create an original scenario based on popular operatic themes of the Baroque period, but to add English dialogue to help make the work more cohesive and readily understandable. And if 24 was going to be an opera, it needed an orchestra. So I decided to tackle that by arranging the works for string ensemble with keyboard when appropriate. Another big consideration I had was addressing casting challenges for collegiate and young professional training companies and programs. So I decided to work to offer alternatives for different voice types, even allowing for sopranos and mezzos to sing pants roles when desired. This would culminate in a hopefully entertaining work that would also act as a perfect vehicle for opera programs of all shapes and sizes. Why this project? Well, this volume to me contains some exquisite music that should be appreciated for its artistic merit and its historical value as well. I believe that these works should be given fully realized artistic performances, and at this time I don't believe they are. And most importantly, I wanted to reintroduce and recontextualize these works for a new audience. So, why am I passionate about this project? Well, as a singer and pedagogue, I can appreciate the merits of this project. If someone had talked to me about it or introduced it to me, I can imagine that I would be excited by it as a pedagogical tool, as a vocal training tool, as a means of artistic expression for students, a way to put up a production that has less technically difficult music, adding more accessible music. Also, the forces involved are going to be tailored to many different kinds of programs. So the idea of it really got me excited. Also, as an instrumentalist, composer, and arranger and writer, I have the ancillary skills to hopefully see this project to fruition. And I can say that the time I've spent working on this project, mulling it over, and bringing it to fruition has been some of the most challenging and rewarding time I've spent so far in my teaching and academic career. So it's pushing me in many different directions, and sometime to my limit. One of the biggest problems with the 24 Italian songs and arias, in my estimation, is the romanticization of it. With the often bombastic and overly complicated piano arrangements and changes to the vocal line, it misinterprets the songs and arias and can give a false impression of what Baroque music really is. So, as a Baroque music specialist, it gives me great pleasure to reclaim these works from the romantic wrappings of their piano accompaniments and harmonic language. That said, I want to honor the original edition by retaining some of its charm and even some of the quirky arrangements. I also want to pay tribute to this precious volume that has been of critical importance to so many young teachers and singers, and myself included. But perhaps my biggest motivation for doing this project, as I mentioned earlier, is to reintroduce and recontextualize these individual songs, giving each its own character and motivation. And by creating a narrative using all 24 songs, I hope to elevate the pieces from this volume into something greater than the sum of its parts. So I want to talk a bit about the development of the piece so far. As I mentioned earlier, I had the initial idea several years ago. It was one of those things that I returned to every so often and thought to myself, I'll think about that when I have more time. And we all know how that goes often. But the initial idea was in 2014. So in between that time and the first action I took, many things happened to come together to make 24 a realistic idea. A move halfway across country, an award of tenure, promotion to full professor, and a looming sabbatical this spring all set the stage for a commitment to seeing this process through. It's an exciting time for me. And then COVID. COVID. All of the canceled work, the canceled travel, the endless days of working from home. Some good came out of it, hopefully for all of us. But for me, I was finally able to begin to think about how to move forward with 24. And as I worked, I also came to the realization that although many of my skill sets were ideal for this project, I needed a collaborator who would bring fresh ideas to my weaker areas and also act as a sounding board. So I contacted my very good friend and fantastic stage director, Chaz Rader-Schieber, director of opera at the Curtis Institute of Music in Philadelphia. I knew from being in some of Chaz's early productions and seeing the wildly creative work that he has done since all over the world, he would be the ideal person to help bring 24 to life. And fortunately, he was extremely inspired by the idea, offering to help in whatever way he could. Chaz has been invaluable in devising the scenario and helping to craft dialogue that is unique to each character. So Chaz and I began last August 2020 to Zoom and Zoom and Zoom. And I began to look for opportunities to develop and workshop the piece. Several proposals later, we had 2 workshops planned, one at Sam Houston State University in Huntsville, Texas, with 6 singers and a pianist, and Chaz was here as well. It was completed in early August of this year. It gave us a chance to run through the piece in order with actual musicians and to see the flow of the songs, to hear the dialogue so far, and to get a sense of the narrative, whether it worked, whether we needed to tweak anything, move songs around, change the narrative a little bit, and also hear the new arrangements, which I'll talk about later. The second workshop just concluded on October 8th at Curtis Institute of Music, where Chaz and I worked with 14 singers, 2 pianists, and a small string ensemble with harpsichord. In that workshop, we had a functional set and 3 weeks of rehearsals to allow the piece to grow and develop to where we are now. We made loads of progress in that, in the orchestral arrangements, in also solidifying the narrative, trimming some dialogue, making things cleaner, clearer, and just helping the flow of the entire piece. We still have some work to go, but that workshop certainly brought us a lot closer to where we want to be. So what is the current state of 24? This is the fun part for me. I get to tell you about the story and the scenario. So we thought we would draw from characters mentioned in the songs, taking names of characters from the actual songs like Nina and Silvio and Clizia and Florindo, Amarelli, and also Tirsi, yes. And also following some of the popular tropes of opera from the period. That would make 24 a fast-paced opera buffa with some elements of pastiche and Singspiel actually mixed in. That's where the dialogue comes in. It sort of resembles the Singspiel. So this newly imagined plot follows a diverse cast of characters, all of whom are caught up in a comedy of errors involving good intentions, unrequited affection, and various potions. A little bit of magic involved. The original version, meaning original voicing and casting, is for 6 characters, 3 female and 3 male. However, it was important for me that casting for 24 be flexible. So in the final version, musical numbers will be available in various keys, so to suit many different combinations of voices. It's even possible for male characters to be played by treble singers, making this work easily adaptable to the needs of individual programs. In fact, in the recent workshop at Curtis Institute, we had 2 casts, one original cast and another a treble cast. The original cast featured a bass baritone in the low voice role of Lord Tirsi, while the treble cast featured a countertenor in the same role. So here's a word about the characters. I'd like to describe these people for you. We have Lord Tirsi, who is a nobleman of multiple talents, both scientific and magical, owner of an emporium that specializes in medicines and potions, mentor and father figure to Silvio. He lost his true love years ago and has lived alone since. He's bitter, he's jaded, and skeptical about love. Then we have Silvio, who is a young, true-hearted nobleman. He's infatuated with Nina, but very insecure. He has nobility and station, enough to have a part-time manservant, but not enough to compete with Nina's wealth. We have Florindo, who is a smart and crafty young man. He's a friend and confident and part-time valet for Silvio. He's single, but he's interested in finding love, possibly with Nina's maid, Millie. We have the Lady Clizia, who is a widowed noblewoman. From humble beginnings, she married into wealth. She's the mother of Nina, takes nothing for granted. She's devout, she's modest, and concerned for her daughter Nina's future. Then we have Janina, or Nina as she's called in the work. The daughter of Lady Clizia, she's charming and lively. She had a wealthy but absent father who is now deceased. She's looking for someone who she believes loves her for herself, not her money. And then we have Amarilli, or Mirli as she is called in the work. She's maidservant to Nina and Lady Clizia. She's quick-witted, she's passionate and independent. She's protective of her friend Nina and wary of attention from suitors for both herself and Nina. Dialogue. In order to drive the narrative, new English dialogue has been created, hopefully to seamlessly connect the musical numbers. I'll give you an example later on in the presentation. Regarding orchestration, the whole work will be scored for strings and keyboard, but a piano vocal score will be available to facilitate productions without orchestra, and also to act as a rehearsal score. Some of the individual numbers will remain standalone arias, sung by one character, while others will be set as duets and ensembles, giving singers and audiences the opportunity to interact with this material in a new way. And I'll be able to tell you more about that in a second. So now, regarding the synopsis, it's quite complex and convoluted, so I will try and be as clear as possible. First, about the setting. 24 is set in some unspecified time, but around the early to middle 18th century. The number 24 is significant beyond the number of songs included. It's also the number of hours in the time span of the action, which is a device often used in plays and operas from the period. It has also been 24 years since our main character, Lord Tircy, has lost his true love. She left him, and he has tried very hard over the years not to become bitter, but he is still alone, and the anger and resentment have caused him to become skeptical of young lovers and their infatuations. In fact, that's the impetus behind our whole story. What begins as an attempt to help turns into an act of sabotage. I'll try and explain. 24 is ultimately about reconciling the desire to control love. Lord Tircy has spent the last 24 years feeling abandoned and growing bitter. He now views young love with contempt, and although he has often stepped in to advise and to help with his potions and remedies, he has now reached a breaking point. So when asked to assist a pair of young couples, he devises a plan that could turn their affections upside down and teach them that love is not worth the trouble. But he didn't count on what happens next, when his plan spirals out of control and wreaks havoc on those around him. Will the potions win the day and thwart young love, or will fate and reason prevail? Find out in the new opera 24. Sounds like a trailer. So I want to talk about a bit about the synopsis and how we use the songs throughout the piece. So I will be throwing in a few tidbits about which songs we use and how we use them. At the top of the opera, we hear the spirit of Lord Tircy's lost love, Arianna, singing Lasciatemi morire. He expresses his frustration, eventually singing the first verse of Che fiero costume. Soon after, Florindo arrives, seeking a potion for his boss Silvio's love interest Nina. As Tircy prepares the potion, Florindo sings of the beauty of life, Già il sole dal Gange. He leaves, and not long after, Nina arrives with her maid Milly. Outside the shop, Nina sings O del mio dolce ardor, expressing her excitement and love for Silvio. She's interrupted right at the cadenza to the da capo as Millie enters the shop. Nina asks Tirsi for help with her problem, a skeptical mother and an unproven suitor. Tirsi offers a solution by way of a label. Poison. Poison. Change the label and fake illness to suss out Silvio's true feelings and prove his devotion to Nina's mother. This is a good moment to give you an example of the dialogue. In this scene, Silvio has just sung Nina and exited in a daze after learning that his dear Ninetta lay dying. Silvio's valet Florindo is now alone with Millie. He has no idea what has just happened and begins the scene with a question. Act 1, Scene 1. I will reenact it for you now. What was that? A man in shock, relishing the intrigue she is about to enact, or perhaps a murderer. Murderer? Yes, perhaps, or maybe not. All I know is that Nina is gravely ill. Poison, and it came from Silvio. A bottle of poison, plain as day. And poor Nina thought... But I brought that bottle to her, a love potion. I know it. I swear it. How could Silvio do such a thing? If he wanted to end things... He didn't. I know he didn't. I brought that bottle directly from Lord Tirsi himself, right from this shop. It wasn't poison. It wasn't. And why would I ever think of doing something so cruel to the mistress of the girl I adore? My own sweet... Don't. But I love you as much as Silvio loves Nina. Well, I should hope a bit more, as she points to the door to the next room where Nina remains dying. The two characters proceed to sing a duet version of Se ben crudele. I'll be accepting my Oscar off stage now. Thank you for indulging me. That was quite fun. So Millie and Florindo sing this duet version of Se ben crudele. And then Millie, now alone, sings of her options in Se Florindo è fedele. If Florindo's faithful, then maybe I'll go after him. Tirsi then sings the second verse of Che fiero costume in anger to Florindo. The girls sing Danza Danza as a duet, one infatuated with the idea of love and the other bored from hearing about it endlessly from her friend. Once Lady Clizia enters, Pietà Signore becomes a complex trio, led by a mother praying downstage for her poisoned daughter, while the daughter and her maid create havoc, the maid pretending to pray alongside the mother, and the sick daughter making all sorts of moans and groans. Tu lo sai is sung by Silvia as an homage to the dying Nina, just before he takes the bottle of mislabeled love potion, which he thinks is poison, in an attempt to kill himself. To Tirsi's surprise, what happens is Silvio instantly falls in love with Clizia, Nina's mother, singing passionately to her in the aria Quella fiamma, il mio bel fuoco. At this point, Lord Tirsi believes that his plan to thwart love has begun to succeed, inspiring him to sing Vittoria mio core as a celebratory anthem to close Act 1. So we end Act 1 in a bit of turmoil. Tirsi thinks that he's gotten his plan underway, and he's on his way to thwarting this love. At the top of Act 2, we're just exactly where we started, with the 5 characters beside Lord Tirsi all in a daze at what's just happened. We hear those 5 characters sing a reprise of Lasciatemi morire, this time sung in Monteverdi's gorgeous 5-part version. It's the only time that I decided we would use music that was actually not in the 24 Italian songs and arias, although it is as a song. It allows the 5 characters to sing together, for us to hear some ensemble singing, and also for each character to interpret the text in their own individual way. Tirsi looks on in cautious joy. In the rest of the second act, all of the love potion hell breaks loose, and Tirsi begins to see the pros and cons of his plan. We hear 2 verses of O Cessate di Piagarmi sung by 2 different characters. Amarilli is sung by Florindo to a person asleep in the chaise who he believes is Nina, but is not. Nel cor più non mi sento, from Paisiello's L'amor contrastato, becomes a trio, where 3 different characters sing to their new loves. Alma del Core becomes a battle between Silvio and Florindo, who are both now in love with Millie with the help of potions. Other songs follow, including Pur di Cesti, Le Violette, and Come Raggio di Sol, all of which further the plot and the mayhem. Finally, realizing his error, Lord Tirsi gives all of the errant lovers a sleeping potion and asks Lady Cletzia for advice. While the lovers lay sleeping on the ground, she encourages Tirsi to try doing nothing and let nature take its course. For good measure, she sings Vergine tut d'amor as a prayer for the resolution to this love madness. As they slowly awake, Florindo and Millie become reconciled in a duet version of Non posso disperar. This leads to the finale, and we do have a true finale. Per la Gloria has been arranged as a sort of Mozart-style finale, beginning with 1 singer, then another, and building into a full 6-voice ensemble. And I'm going to play a bit of that for you now. So for this finale, I wanted it to start gently and build to the entire group. What happens is Nina and Silvio are still asleep, but she wakes up at the beginning of it and begins intimately professing her love to Silvio, who she had previously doubted. Silvio responds in kind, pledging his eternal devotion. Lord Tirsi and Lady Cletzia then affirm that fate has indeed prevailed, and Millie and Florindo join in, happy to be reunited after a difficult day. This performance is from an early version of the finale. It's changed a bit since then, but it's performed by singers at the SHSU workshop. They are Megan Stapleton, soprano, who you will hear first, Emily Anderson, mezzo-soprano as Millie, Emily House-Heilman, mezzo-soprano, who you will hear as Lady Cletzia, Piero Regis, tenor, who you will hear as Silvio, Carlos Figueroa, baritone, you will hear as Florindo, and Tyler Resto, bass baritone, who you will hear as Lord Tirsi. The pianist is Brian Benowitz. Enjoy. hope you enjoyed that. It was certainly fun for me to work on and to try and work out how these individual voices and characters could start to bring this final piece alive and also take the story to its conclusion. You, I wish I could play more of the music for you. The other duets and trios in the piece are reimagined with the same sort of care and love, and hopefully will be interesting and will elevate the music to a new level. So this brings me to conclusion. I believe that universities and professional companies will benefit from performances of this new work, or even just working through doing workshops of it, excerpting bits of it for scene programs and such. I firmly believe that it's going to be a wonderful teaching tool, and I look forward to using it with my students. And I'm really excited that I get to share with you about it today. A few details about upcoming publication and availability of the score. That is a bit of time away. There's a bit of writing left to do, a bit of development left to do, but I have been in conversation with publishers of several types, and I've gotten some great ideas on how to go about making the piece available to universities or the public through the piano vocal score, and eventually the parts. And also the exciting thing about this is how to work out getting the different versions to different companies who need it. How do I get a version, an all treble version, to a school or a young professional company? So those details are being worked out, but it's all something I'm very excited about developing, and hope to have more news for you at a later date about publication and availability. So hopefully on Nat's Facebook page or Texoma Nat's Facebook page, I can announce something to you in the coming months. So normally in our situation, this would be a time for me to open up myself to questions and comments about what you've just heard. I really regret that we can't be together and speak about this, and I wish that I could take all your questions and comments with me today personally. But please join in the question and answer period that is going to be provided during the NATS conference. Also, please jot down my email address. I'm excited. I would be thrilled to hear from you with any comments or ideas that you believe could make this piece better for students and for university or professional opera programs. That's my goal. I've learned so much already from everyone I've spoken to about this piece, and I continue to incorporate ideas and just in a way to just improve it and make it better, to eventually be the best training tool it can be. So that's it. Thank you for allowing me this time and for joining me for this presentation. I hope you have a great rest of your Texoma Nats 2021 conference and a wonderful end to your fall 2021 semester. Again, contact me at boutte@shsu.edu at any time with any questions or comments. And again, thank you for being here with me.